I regret to inform you that earlier this month, I made the inevitable, jaw-dropping, and, quite frankly, very upsetting decision to drop Sergei Bobrovsky from my fantasy team because the Florida Panthers suck this year, and he's not doing his part in keeping them above water. The Panthers right now are 8 points out of a playoff spot. They are third last in the Eastern Conference, and in the entire National Hockey League, they're 22nd. How's that for the reigning, undisputed, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions for ya? But what if I told you that it just keeps on getting better for this Panthers team? And I'm not referring to Sergei Bobrovsky and his dog-water save percentages. I'm referring to the Seth Jones trade, which the Panthers made with the Chicago Blackhawks 1 year ago. You see, Seth Jones was traded to Florida for Knight and a first-round pick. But the issue with that is that the first-round pick has some details that we actually did not really know about until today. Take a look at the initial wording on the NHL's website when the trade was made. Jones was traded to the Panthers by Chicago for goalie Spencer Knight and a conditional first-round pick in 2026. Florida also received a fourth-round pick in 2026. That's it. What's the condition on this first-round pick? Well, we don't really know. The article doesn't go out there and say. Meanwhile, we had Frank Seravalli earlier this morning going out there and tweeting some new details about the actual pick itself. I'm in the process of launching a new site, Hockey 24/7, so consider today a soft launch, a clarification that seemed to catch Florida and Blackhawks fans off guard. Yes, Florida's 2026 pick is top 10 protected. Details here at hockey247.com. Frank, exciting stuff on the new site. Congrats. Honest question. Didn't the Panthers trade their 2027 first-round pick to Boston for Marchand? If so, how does that affect the trade, assuming the top 10 protection for the 2026 pick kicks in? It would work in the same way that the first sentence is written in the condition for the Calgary pick. Chicago would have first rights to Florida's 2027, and Boston would slide to 2028. Take a look at the article, hockey247.com. I guess it's Frank Seravalli's new endeavor. He went out there and posted this as the NHL hits pause for 19 days for players to compete at the 2026 Winter Olympics. The banged-up Florida Panthers are 9 points out of a playoff spot and seeking to avoid becoming the first defending Cup champion to miss the postseason the following year. But that doesn't mean they are uninsured against a lost season. Details of last year's acquisition for defenseman Seth Jones had been inaccurately reported elsewhere. The Panthers' first-round pick sent to Chicago is, in fact, top 10 protected for the upcoming draft. According to a league source, the exact language of the transaction is this: Chicago will receive Florida's first-round pick in 2026, provided, however, in the event first, such pick is transferred to Calgary pursuant to the conditions of an earlier trade, or second, such pick is a top 10 pick, following the determination of the 2026 NHL Draft lottery results. Then, Florida will instead transfer their own first-round pick in 2027 to Chicago in lieu of their own first-round pick in 2026. If neither of the conditions, first or second, occur, Chicago shall receive Florida's first-round pick in 2026. Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting because Florida has been trading away first-round picks like candy the past few years. Ben Sherratt, Matthew Tkachuk, Seth Jones, Brad Marchand, the list goes on. They're the double-time champs, so I guess they don't really care, but this is where things get a little bit confusing. On the first stipulations as to the pick not being transferred over to Chicago, Florida already satisfied that first one. Their 2025 first-round pick was transferred to Calgary from the Matthew Tkachuk trade, and Calgary selected Cullen Potter. That means if the Panthers are determined after the draft lottery to select in the top 10, they will retain their 2026 pick, and could even choose to trade it elsewhere if they so desired. The Panther season has been marred by injury, yada yada yada. Is there anything about the Brad Marchand thing over here? Doesn't look like it. So, yeah. It would work in the same way that the first sentence is written in condition for the Calgary pick. I see. So, if Chicago ends up getting the Florida 2027 pick, then Florida's 2028 pick would be given to Boston instead. This is where things get a little bit wonky because a lot of people, they're going out there sharing their opinions, firstly about Frank Seravalli using this piece of info to launch his new website, but secondly about the stipulations as to the trade itself. Jay Zawowski went out there and said this. He's, of course, a podcast host for Chicago Blackhawks and the I'm Fat podcast. He said, per the Blackhawks, Frank Seravalli's reporting is correct. The Panthers' 2026 pick is top 10 protected. If Florida gets a top 10 draft spot, then do the Hawks get a later pick? It slides to a 2027 unprotected first-round pick. Question is, how does something like this go unreported for 11 months? You see, a lot of Blackhawks fans were looking at Florida this season and saying, hey, these guys suck. That's really good for us because we got their first-round pick from that Seth Jones trade and Spencer Knight. That's a great piece of business for Chicago, but now it's like, wait a minute, no, Florida is actually that bad, and they have protection on the draft pick. Always use protection, my friends. That is a pretty big shot to Chicago Blackhawks fans who wanted to wish ill on this Panthers team, which I guess, honestly, you don't even need to be a Blackhawks fan to do that. I think most of the league does at this point. Double-time champ, unlikable team, very physical, very demeaning, yada, yada, yada. But Florida being this bad is something that nobody really expected, and having them have the, 10th best odds in the lottery is absolutely not where anybody thought this Panthers team would be. Bobrovsky is not good, they're injured, they're not scoring as much as they probably should, and they're in this spot regardless. So Blackhawks fans were salivating. Hey, they're so far down the standings, they're so close to the bottom of the barrel, we can get a good pick. But now it's like, no, sorry, we actually can't because it's a protected top 10 draft pick. Take a look at this. This is the Reddit post. What Timmy Turner 98 does is he goes out there and uses a quote from Daily Faceoff from March 2025. If Knight is the headliner of the Jones return, an unprotected 2026 first rounder doesn't hurt. The pick is conditional in name only. It will go to the Blackhawks so long as the Cats don't have a top 10 selection. A commenter here says, good pull. That quote about being in name only aged like milk. And that's exactly what's said here. The pick is conditional in name only, because it was so preposterous to assume that Florida would be having a top 10 selection that I guess people just didn't really report on it that much. It's written about in Daily Faceoff from March 2025, but nobody really thought it was actually worth thinking about. The pick will go to the Blackhawks only if Florida doesn't have a top 10 selection. Lionheart, Blackhawks fan, goes out there and says, yep, I'm so mad I missed that. So top 10 protected was always assumed, just never explicitly mentioned because nobody expected the Panthers to tank this year. So, with all that in mind, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Frank Seravalli dropping a bomb for Blackhawks fans. Your top 10 pick for the Florida Panthers? It's actually top 10 protected. And depending on what happens next year, I think it's reasonable to assume the Panthers don't do too well this season to finish off the year. They finish out of the playoffs. They maybe become the first NHL champion to ever do that, not qualify for the playoffs next year. But 2026-27 is fair game. Everybody could be coming back. Barkov could be back. Tkachuk maybe has a full year because he finally has an offseason to rest. Florida spends all the money that they can to get back into the playoffs, and then Chicago gets screwed over because the Cats are a powerhouse again next season. It's a possibility. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on, and bye.